2 Chronicles 2:4 says this, "Behold, I am building a temple for the name of Yahweh my God, to dedicate it to Him, to burn before Him sweet incense for the continual showbread, for the burnt offering mornings and evening, on the Sabbaths, on the new moons, and on the set feasts of the Lord our God. This is an ordinance forever to Israel." Okay? How long did he say? Okay? And just like Bill Clinton says, it's just the definition, depends on what the definition of is, right? So it depends on the definition that you have for forever. Okay? So we need to be very clear and find out what does forever mean in the Scriptures, because right here is the crux of everything that we're going to be talking about before we actually get into the details of the feast, is who they were given to and for how long. And right now we see that there, no question about it, they're given to Israel. Did everybody see that? Okay, Mount Sinai, pretty obvious. And it says right here in 2 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 4, "And it was given to Israel forever." So let's find out how forever is, if forever actually penetrates the New Covenant shield. Because how many of us have grown up believing that the feast days, the festivals, the laws, the commandments, decrees, the ordinances, the instructions, the manual, the blueprint for living ended when the Messiah came? Okay, most all of us have grown up learning that. So if that's the case, then these shadows that we have been learning about have ended, and they have no value or relevance to us today. And forever, then, the definition of forever ends at the Messiah. Do you understand the logic? Okay? So we're going to find out what forever means. And we're going to find that by going to Zechariah chapter 14. Okay, so if you have your Bibles, you can turn there if you'd like, or you can read it on the slide. But the bottom line is here, the context is the Messiah has just touched down on the Mount of Olives. Does anybody know when this happens? The second coming. Okay? He comes down from riding on the clouds, and his feet land on the Mount of Olives and split it in two. He has just finished destroying the nations, and he's setting up shop in the New Jerusalem. And this is what he says in verse 16. He says, "Then the survivors from all the nations that have attacked Jerusalem will go up year after year to worship the King, Yahweh Almighty, to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles." I just pulled one verse out of there. So this is intriguing, because we have the nations celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles in the 1,000-year millennial reign of the Messiah. Does everybody see that? So now we have penetrated the veil of the New Covenant. Matter of fact, we penetrated beyond the veil of when the Messiah came the first time, all the way through the next 2,000 years, and we penetrated the veil of the second coming of the Messiah, you see. So the question is everything that we've taught about the shadows being just only a part-time job, so to speak, and then they're done away with when the substance comes? If the shadows are truly done away with, then why does He bring them back in the millennium, and not only bring them back, but create punishment, severe punishment, if you don't keep them? I'm going to submit that when He said they're forever, He meant that. There's very few things, let me rephrase, there's nothing that God says that isn't true. Did I say that right? I had to think through that for a second. There's nothing that He says that's not going to come true. So when He says forever, it's probably forever. Would you agree with me? So in biblical hermeneutics and interpretations, you should always err on the side of the literal. And I'm being serious. You should always err on the side of literal if it's ambiguous, because the plain meaning of the text is pretty much the plain meaning of the text. Okay? Verse 17, "If any of the peoples of the earth do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord Almighty, they will have no rain." Okay? So I think it's really important that we begin to start learning how to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, whether it's mandatory or not, we can debate that. I happen to believe that it is for us today because it's part of the covenant. But even if it's not, I think it's a good idea to learn them just so that when you get there, you'll already know how to do it. So that rain will come. Because remember, Israel's job was to be a light to the nations. They were supposed to take these wonderful things that God gave them and be a light and spread them to the nations so that the nations could come to know the Lord and they would be blessed as well. Because back in the day, in the ancient day, okay, in the Neanderthal day of the the early ancient Jew, as Brad Scott says, is that the commandments were life. They were never looked at as something burdensome. It was only until man added a bunch of stuff to it that they became burdensome. Okay? They were looked at as life throughout the entire kingdom at that time. So let's define who Israel is, because first of all, what we've done is we've defined that the feast days were given to Israel, and we've also uncovered that they were given to Israel forever. So before we even get into the feast days, I think it's very important that we back up and find out, well, what's even the value or the point of why we do this? So we're going to let the Scriptures tell us that. They're given to Israel, they're given forever. So now let's quickly